May 27, 1942. Pearl Harbor, Hawaii. Below the bright Pacific sun and the orderly rows of warships at anchor, a windowless basement hums with heat and tension. Ceiling fans push stale air across rows of desks littered with coffee cups, grease pencils, and stacks of intercepted radio traffic. The walls are bare. No flags. No windows. Just the low crackle of receivers and the scratch of pencils against paper. Commander Joseph Rochefort, U.S. Navy, leans forward over a battered wooden desk, his uniform jacket abandoned hours ago. His tie is loose. His eyes are red from lack of sleep. In front of him lies another strip of Japanese naval code, Jan. 25, the same cipher that has taunted American intelligence since the opening blows of the war. To most of the Navy, it is an impenetrable wall of numbers. To the men in Station HYPO, it is a voice that is starting to slip. A young lieutenant slides a fresh intercept across the desk. Rochefort doesn't thank him. He doesn't look up. He already knows what it might contain and what it might confirm. The message mentions AF. Again, somewhere in the vast Pacific, the Imperial Japanese Navy is moving. Carefully, confidently, certain that its communications are secure. The codebreakers can't read everything yet, not even close, but they don't need to. Patterns are emerging. Repetitions. Timings. A rhythm that wasn't there before. Rochefort straightens slowly. Around him, the room quiets as if the men can feel the shift before it's spoken. AF, he says aloud, testing the sound of it. They keep talking about AF like it's a place that matters. No one answers. They already know. Across the Pacific, Japanese carrier decks gleam under the sun. Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto, architect of Pearl Harbor, believes he is about to finish what December began. His plan is elegant, almost cruel in its precision. Lure the remaining American carriers into a trap. Destroy them. Break U.S. naval power in one decisive blow. The target is isolated, vulnerable, and, so Yamamoto believes, unguarded by surprise, Midway Atoll. But in this basement, thousands of miles away, surprise is already bleeding out of the plan. The men of Station HYPO are not glamorous. There are no medals waiting for them. Some wear slippers instead of regulation shoes. Rochefort himself is known for ignoring uniform codes entirely. But their minds are sharp, and their instincts, honed by months of defeat, are unforgiving. Japanese radio discipline has tightened since Pearl Harbor, but volume has increased. More messages, more coordination. Fleet units once silent are now talking. Something big is coming. Rochefort pushes back from the desk and walks toward a chalkboard filled with dates, call signs, and arrows pointing across the Pacific. He taps the chalk against the board once. They think we don't know, he says. That's the mistake. The problem is proof. Washington isn't convinced. OP-20G, Naval Intelligence Headquarters, remains cautious. Some analysts believe AF could be anywhere. Maybe the Aleutians, maybe a feint. Rochefort needs certainty. Not theory, not intuition. Something undeniable. So he proposes a gamble. Midway will transmit an unencrypted message stating it is short on fresh water. If Japanese intercepts mention AF suffering water shortages, the mask will come off. Hours later, the message is sent. It goes out across the Pacific in plain language, like bait dropped into deep water. Then the waiting begins. Back in the basement, the air grows heavier. Cigarette smoke curls toward the ceiling. Radios crackle. Men freeze mid-step when new traffic comes in. Every intercept is torn open like a letter from fate. And then, it happens. A decoded fragment arrives, hurriedly passed from hand to hand until it reaches Rochefort. AF is short on water. The room goes silent, and cheers. No smiles. Just the quiet understanding that something irreversible has just occurred. The Pacific has shifted, not with an explosion or a gunshot, but with a sentence overheard by the wrong people. Rochefort closes his eyes for a moment. When he opens them, the war looks different. Midway is the target. The date is coming soon. The Japanese carriers, Akagi, Kaga, Soryu, Hiryu, are moving east. And for the first time since the war began, the United States knows where the enemy will be before he arrives. The trap is no longer Japanese. It is being rebuilt, piece by piece, in this basement, and soon, the men who believe they are hunting will sail directly into an ambush they never knew existed. May 28, 1942. Pearl Harbor. The sun is already high when Rochefort's confirmation reaches Admiral Chester W. Nimitz, Commander-in-Chief of the U.S. Pacific Fleet. Nimitz stands at a broad desk overlooking the harbor, binoculars resting nearby. Outside, repair crews swarm damaged ships like ants over wreckage. Pearl Harbor still smells faintly of oil and rust 6 months after the attack. Nimitz listens without interrupting as the intelligence summary is delivered. He doesn't pace. He doesn't speak. When the briefing ends, he simply nods once. Midway, he says. Not a question. A verdict. For the Japanese, Midway is bait, an exposed outpost whose capture will force the Americans to respond. For Nimitz, it becomes an anvil. If he can place his remaining carriers correctly, Yamamoto's hammer will swing down and shatter itself. The problem is numbers. The U.S. Navy has exactly 3 operational carriers in the Pacific: USS Enterprise, USS Hornet, and the badly battered USS Yorktown, still bearing scars from the Battle of the Coral Sea. Japanese planners believe Yorktown is sunk. Their confidence is absolute. They are wrong. Inside Pearl Harbor's dry docks, welders work around the clock. Steel plates are slapped over gaping holes. Burned wiring is ripped out and replaced. Crews sleep in snatches of minutes, eating where they stand. Engineers ignore peacetime standards and sign off on repairs that would have taken months before the war. Nimitz gives Yorktown 72 hours. The carrier leaves port barely patched, her crew knowing she is going back into combat unfinished. Paint still dries on her hull as she clears the harbor. To Japanese intelligence, she does not exist. At Midway itself, the atoll buzzes with preparation. Marine aviators arrive with outdated planes and grim expressions. Brewster F-2A Buffaloes sit beside Grumman F-4F Wildcats, outclassed, but all that is available. Army Air Forces crews unload B-17 Flying Fortresses, their heavy frames awkward on coral runways. Radar towers rise above the flat island, skeletal and exposed. These crude early warning sets will matter more than any bomb on the other side of the ocean. Admiral Yamamoto finalizes his plan aboard the battleship Yamato. It is complex, layered, elegant. Carriers strike Midway. Invasion forces follow. American carriers rush in to defend the atoll. Japanese surface fleets finish the job. The plan assumes one thing: surprise. Japanese pilots believe the Americans will not know where or when the blow will fall. Their confidence borders on arrogance. Pearl Harbor proved that the enemy is slow, reactive, predictable. But now, every Japanese transmission is a breadcrumb trail. At Station HYPO, Rochefort and his team track fleet movements with growing clarity. Call signs shift. Units detach. Timetables align. The picture sharpens with every intercepted message. They know when the carriers will arrive. They know from which direction. They know Midway will be struck first, before dawn. Nimitz issues his orders quietly. There will be no grand announcement. No radio chatter. The carriers will sail north of Midway and wait. Engines throttled back. Radios silent. The ocean itself will hide them. On June 3rd, the waiting ends. Radar operators on Midway pick up distant contacts. Specs resolve into aircraft. Japanese bombers approach in disciplined formation, sunlight glinting off canopies. The war has found Midway. Anti-aircraft guns bark. Bombs tear into fuel tanks and buildings. Runways crater. Planes burn where they sit. But the island survives. The radar stations survive. And most importantly, Midway radios its report. The Japanese believe the Americans are reacting late. They are not reacting at all. North of the atoll, Beyond the horizon, U.S. carriers turn into the wind. Flight decks come alive. Deck crews snap into motion. Engines roar. Pilots strap in, unaware that history has already tilted in their favor. Yamamoto waits for the American carriers to appear. He does not know they are already there. He does not know his code has been broken. And he does not know that the Pacific, once an open ocean, has just become a carefully measured trap. June 4th, 1942. For 30 hours. North Pacific Ocean. Dawn breaks in thin gray layers, the sky low and hazy above a restless sea. Aboard the Japanese carrier Akagi, flight deck crews move with practiced precision. Engines warm. Bombs are wheeled into place. Pilots adjust scarves and goggles, confident, calm. This is supposed to be another Pearl Harbor, another demonstration of imperial mastery. Vice Admiral Chuchi Nagumo watches from the bridge as the first strike lifts off toward Midway. 108 aircraft vanish eastward, their engines fading into the morning haze. Nagumo believes he holds every advantage. He does not know that 3 American carriers are already waiting beyond his scouting arcs. Minutes later, Midway's radar screens bloom with contacts. Sirens wail. Pilots sprint across coral runways under rising smoke. Planes take off one by one. Fighters, torpedo bombers, high-altitude bombers, climbing into a sky already filled with enemy aircraft. The first American counterstrikes are desperate and disjointed. TBD devastators lumber forward at wavetop height, slow and exposed. Japanese Zero fighters tear into them mercilessly. One squadron after another is annihilated. Torpedoes miss or fail to arm. Radios crackle with last words, then fall silent. From the Japanese decks, it looks like confirmation of everything they believed. American pilots are brave, but ineffective. Their aircraft are obsolete. Their attacks uncoordinated. Nagumo allows himself a measure of relief. Then Midway reports it has been hit, but not destroyed. Nagumo faces a decision that will doom the Japanese fleet. He orders his reserve aircraft rearmed for a second strike against the island. Bombs are removed. Torpedoes are wheeled away. Fuel lines snake across hangar decks. Ordnance stacks grow. The carriers are briefly at their most vulnerable. Decks cluttered, planes packed wingtip to wingtip, like a T-728. A delayed scout plane finally reports American carriers to the east. The message arrives incomplete. Confused. Then clarified. Carriers. Plural. Nagumo freezes. Orders are reversed. Bombs must be swapped again for torpedoes. Deck crews race against time, dragging munitions back and forth as engines idle. Fuel vapors hang in the air. Below decks, chaos replaces precision. Meanwhile, far above the clouds, American SBD Dauntless dive bombers search blindly. Fuel gauges creep downward. Navigators argue headings. The ocean below offers no landmarks, only endless blue. Then, almost by accident, they find them at T-1020. Lieutenant Commander Wade McCluskey spots a lone Japanese destroyer racing north at full speed. Ayrshire, returning to its carrier group after hunting a submarine. McCluskey follows the wake. The gamble pays off. The Japanese carriers appear below, perfectly framed, decks crowded with aircraft. No combat air patrol at altitude. Zeros are still chasing torpedo bombers near the surface. For a few frozen seconds, the Americans stare in disbelief. Then gravity takes over. Dive brakes scream open. Dauntless roll inverted and plunge. The sky fills with falling aircraft, bombs whistling downward. Japanese gunners fire wildly. Too late. Tracking shapes already committed to their dives. Bombs hit Kaga first. Explosions rip through hangar decks packed with fuel and munitions. Akagi is struck near the bridge, flames racing through her interior. Soryu erupts in towering plumes of smoke and fire. Within minutes, 3 of Japan's frontline carriers are burning beyond control. On Akagi's bridge, Nagumo watches the disaster unfold, stunned. Less than half an hour earlier, he believed victory inevitable. Now, Black smoke rolls across the sea, blotting out the sun. The balance of naval power shifts not over months, not over campaigns, but in a single morning. Far above, American pilots pull out of their dives and climb away, shocked by what they have accomplished. Many do not yet understand it. They only know they hit something big. Down below, the Pacific burns. June 4th, 1942. Late morning, North Pacific Ocean. Smoke hangs low over the sea, a dark ceiling blotting out the sky above the shattered carrier decks. On Akagi, damage control parties fight fires with hoses that spit steam more than water. Ammunition cooks off below, the hull shuddering with each internal explosion. Orders echo down passageways that no longer lead anywhere useful. Vice Admiral Nagumo stands rigid on the bridge, his binoculars lowered. 3 carriers, Akagi, Kaga, Soryu, are already lost in everything but name. The shock is not only tactical, it is philosophical. This was never supposed to happen. Japanese doctrine prized the decisive opening blow. Surprise, speed, annihilation. But surprise has been stolen. Speed has turned against them. To the north, the lone remaining carrier, Hiryu, still lives. Rear Admiral Taman Yamaguchi acts without hesitation. If the Americans have carriers, then those carriers must be struck now, before the noose tightens completely. Hiryu's flight decks clear amid smoke and confusion. Aircraft are fueled. Crews work feverishly, knowing they are the last intact striking force of the Kido Butte. At T-1058, Hiryu launches her first counterstrike. Japanese dive bombers race south, skimming cloud layers, their pilots tense but determined. They find their target just after noon. USS Yorktown, already scarred from Coral Sea weeks earlier, hastily patched and returned to battle faster than any Japanese planner believed possible. The bombs hit with brutal precision. Explosions tear through Yorktown's decks. Fires erupt. Power fails. Smoke pours skyward. From a distance, she appears mortally wounded, dead in the water. Japanese pilots' radio success reports with grim satisfaction. Back aboard Hiryu, Yamaguchi believes balance has been restored. It is an illusion. Damage control aboard Yorktown is immediate, disciplined, relentless. Sailors form bucket brigades, seal ruptured fuel lines, reroute power. Within hours, she is moving again. To Japanese eyes, it appears as though a second American carrier has emerged from nowhere. Hiryu launches again. This time, torpedo bombers strike Yorktown's port side. Water floods compartments. The ship lists sharply. Captain Elliot Buckmaster finally gives the order to abandon ship. The carrier drifts, wounded but afloat. Her crew watching smoke curl upward as they wait for what comes next. But even now, the trap is tightening. American reconnaissance finds Hiryu in the early afternoon. The pattern is familiar now. Search planes, hurried calculations, the sudden clarity of a contact report. Dive bombers launch once more. T-1700 hours. Dauntless scream out of the sky. Bombs strike Hiryu in rapid succession. Fires race across her decks. Aircraft explode where they stand. Admiral Yamaguchi refuses evacuation, choosing to go down with his ship as smoke consumes the carrier from bow to stern. By nightfall, all 4 Japanese carriers that attacked Pearl Harbor 6 months earlier are destroyed or sinking. The silence that follows is uncanny. Wreckage drifts. Oil slicks spread across the ocean, reflecting burning fragments like shattered stars. American pilots circle cautiously, half expecting another trick, another unseen threat. None comes. Below decks on American ships, sailors begin to understand what they have done, not through speeches or announcements, but through numbers. Carrier losses. Aircraft counts. Survivors missing. The Japanese Navy has lost its experienced aircrews, its offensive corps, its strategic initiative, and none of it happened by accident. In a windowless room thousands of miles away, codebreakers had rearranged the future with pencil marks and educated guesses. They never saw the smoke, never heard the engines, But every explosion traces back to their work. Midway is not just a battle. WON.IT is a war redirected. June 5, 1942. Dawn. Central Pacific. The sea is strangely quiet. Smoke still rises from the horizon. Thin black columns marking where empires collided and broke apart. American destroyers move cautiously through debris fields, twisted metal, floating flight gear, shattered wooden crates with Japanese markings. The smell of oil is everywhere. On USS Enterprise, pilots sit in silence, helmets resting on their knees. No cheering, no celebration, just exhaustion and disbelief. They know they survived something vast, something precise, something almost prearranged. Admiral Chester W. Nimitz receives confirmation as reports filter in. For enemy carriers destroyed. One American carrier lost, another damaged but afloat. The numbers alone don't capture it. What matters is when it happened and why. Japanese commanders are still trying to understand what went wrong. In Tokyo, naval staff pore over fragmented after-action reports. Reconnaissance failures are blamed. Poor luck. American audacity. No one yet speaks openly about the possibility that their codes have been compromised. The idea is too dangerous, too destabilizing. The Imperial Navy has always trusted its encryption, and so the broken code remains broken. In Hawaii, the men who cracked it are instructed to say nothing. Joseph Rochefort returns to his cluttered basement office at Station HYPO. No medals, no ceremonies. Just new intercepts rolling in, new ciphers shifting subtly, but not enough. The Americans keep listening. From this point forward, Japanese fleets rarely move unseen. Convoys are intercepted, raids anticipated, traps avoided, or laid. The balance of initiative quietly changes hands, not in a single moment, but in a sustained erosion of surprise. Midway echoes outward at Guadalcanal. American forces arrive before the Japanese expect them. In the Solomon Islands, carrier movements feel increasingly reactive on the Japanese side. Pilots notice American fighters arriving at the right place, at the right time, far too often. Behind every engagement is a pattern the Japanese cannot see. A broken code does not win wars alone. Ships must still sail. Men must still fight. Blood must still be paid. But Midway ensures that those sacrifices now move in one direction. The Pacific becomes hostile terrain for the Imperial Navy, not because of geography, but because of knowledge. Even the sea seems to conspire. By late 1942, Japan is fighting defensively, stretching limited industrial capacity to replace losses it can no longer afford. The elite carrier air arm, once the sharpest blade in naval warfare, is gone. Its pilots resting at the bottom of the ocean, and still, the Americans listen. What began as fragments of intercepted signals becomes operational certainty. The enemy is no longer invisible. The Pacific is no longer a vast unknown. It is a monitored space, a watched ocean. Years later, when historians debate turning points, they will point to Midway as the moment the war changed direction. But those who were there understand something quieter and more unsettling. The battle was decided before the first plane launched, before the first bomb fell, before the Japanese fleet ever reached the horizon. The trap had already been set.